I'm Chris, and this is Patriot Party News. I have the privilege of sitting next to Sid Miller, the Ag Commissioner for the state of Texas. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Good to be with you today.
Good to be with you, sir. Can you explain to my viewers what the job of the Ag Commissioner is?
Well, it'll take a while. We have over 130 statutory functions that we perform for the state government and for the federal government. But, of course, we do cows, sows, and plows, but we're also the Consumer Protection Agency for the state. We run the nutrition programs for the federal government, the state government. I'm responsible for 5 million school meals each day. We are the kind of like the Chamber of Commerce for the state. We have a really advanced marketing program that we take globally. We have our own TV show. We have our own NASCAR team, so we're very involved in that. We're house the Office of Rural Health Care. I'm over 191 counties trying to make sure that they have adequate health care. Livestock export facilities, 4 on the Rio Grande River, 1 at the airport in Houston. The list is long.
Well, how do you keep track of everything?
Well, I have 4 assistant commissioners and a deputy commissioner, and, it's just like business. We set up in a business model. We break it down, and everybody has their responsibility, just like the military, and that's the way we manage it, just like a business.
So what is the state of agriculture in Texas right now?
It's pretty good. Thanks to Donald Trump, we had the tariff war. We'd always been in a tariff war for the last 50 years, but we never fought back. Trump finally fought back, and our farmers are now receiving record prices for their crops where they never have experienced that before. But our cotton, soybean, grain sorghum, they're all doing very well. But it's because of those policies. Things also like renegotiating the NAFTA into the USMCA. That's been, that's a huge win for agriculture. So it's been good.
Can you explain real quick what's going on with the massive inflation that we're seeing in beef prices and chicken prices?
Well, that's really sad because while consumers are paying more, farmers are receiving less. So like during the pandemic, a farmer was losing about $500 a head on a steer. And the packing plants were making about $2,500 to $3,000 on the same animal. So I reached out to then President Trump and to Attorney General William Barr explaining this. And within 3 hours, the president announced that he was requiring a full investigation of the big 4 packing plants for collusion and price fixing. Now,
that is against the law, right?
It is against the law. Now, since he left the presidency and William Barr is no longer there, there's nothing happening with that investigation. So we're trying to call for them to, take it off the shelf and dust it off and finish the investigation. Because even now, there's about a $300 loss versus $800 or $900 profit. So it's just disparaging. And the real losers, not only the farmers are losers, but the consumers are losers too.
Yes, sir. And you spoke about the Biden administration. I'm really interested to get your opinion on the war on beef.
Well, it's not only war on beef, but it's also a war on farmers. Actually suing President Biden and Secretary Vilsack over the pandemic relief that they just put out. Farmers need some help, like I just described how much money they were losing on their animals, and we had to euthanize hogs and chickens and pour milk down the, it was a pretty tough time during the pandemic. So they've got a pandemic aid package, and farmers are eligible for it if you have the right skin color. It's pure racism. If you want to end racism, quit acting racist. So if you're a minority farmer, you qualify, which is less than 2% of the farmers, by the way. So less than 2% of the farmers are going to receive 100% of the funds. So that's just not right. We actually won a similar case last week. We filed one, the Texas First Legal is my legal team that I'm working with. But they filed one for a restaurant owner. It was the same thing. They could get their pandemic relief if they were minority first, or if they were a woman second, or a veteran third. If you're an old white guy, you go to the end of the line. Of course, all the money's gone. So that was successful last week. The judge stopped that and said it was unconstitutional. So hopefully in the next week or two, we'll settle this case that I brought against the Biden administration for racism.
Was the ruling in the court Was it timely enough that it will have an impact, or have they given too much of the money away?
They hadn't issued any of it yet, and so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get in front of it, so it stopped them from doing what they were about to do.
That's excellent news. So the next question I had for you is, we're receiving a lot of reports online that the federal government is buying up farmland. Can you speak to the truth of that?
I don't know any the federal government buying up farmland, but we do have people like Bill Gates, and we recently had a Chinese communist general that bought up 140,000 acres in South Texas to put in a wind farm, which would give China access to our grid. Really, in Texas, we're letting them do that?
Right outside an Air Force base.
And right outside our Air Force base. So thankfully, Senator Donna Campbell actually passed a bill, and it's on the governor's desk, that would not allow them to put up this wind farm. So that, I think we got that one stopped.
Speaking of wind farms, how do wind farms and other sustainable energy sources impact the agricultural industry?
Well, they have their positive and their negative. Of course, they go right in your best farmland a lot of times, and it messes up the ability to plow and cultivate the field because they put roads in and big pads, and then here comes the transmission lines, and so it makes a mess of your field operation. But for some farmers that have them, it's pretty lucrative income. It's what I call mailbox money. You don't have to do anything but go to the mailbox and get the check. And so, but for the rest of us, it's a blight on the landscape. If we don't ever build another wind turbine in Texas, it wouldn't be too soon for me, because we've got already about 30% of our grid, and that's a whole nother subject, how we fix our grid, because everybody knows what the governor allowed to happen to our grid.
I've been in communication with ERCOT since that event, and the story is remarkable. I think a lot of people learned exactly how fragile our grid really was. So you spoke about relationship with the governor. Is the governor supportive of the agricultural industry in general?
I don't know. He's been in office 7 years. I've never heard the word agriculture come out of his mouth. I don't know that he's ever visited a farming operation or an agriculture processor, not to my knowledge. So even though we're the second largest industry in the state, he acts like we don't exist.
That seems very unfortunate. My last question is what do the next 10 years look like for agriculture in Texas?
That's very interesting. It looks bright. I'll give you a quick synopsis of that. We started out in agriculture 1.0, and that was, 40 acres and a mule, basically just subsistence farming. From that, we went to agriculture 2.0, and that was the area of mechanization, where now we have combines and huge tractors and automated equipment, where one man can farm 2,000 acres instead of 40 acres. So now we're at the next 10 years, we're going to experience agriculture, what I call 3.0, and that's the technology age. And that's through genetic engineering of crops. It's drone, doing your crop analysis and spraying the pesticides and aerial mapping and precision application of fertilizers. And one of the best things that's happened through genetic engineering, that we're able to use genetically modified crops, is conventional. We go from conventional farming, which takes about 5 gallons of diesel to an acre, to no-till or low-till, which uses about 1 gallon of diesel per acre. So we're reducing our fossil fuels by 80%. No one talks about the positives of it.
Well, that seems like it would offset the supposed damage from cattle, period.
Right. So, if we're using 80% less because of technology, Agriculture 3.0, we're using 80% less fossil fuels. We're also using 60% less pesticides and 40% less fertilizers. So, this is a great time for agriculture. It's a great time for environments. Farmers and ranchers are the best environmentalists there is. They just don't talk about it. We own that subject. We were, doing sustainable things before it was in vogue and cool thing to do.
So it sounds like Texans don't really have to worry about food coming up in the next decade or so. Commissioner Miller, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for sitting down with us.
Anytime, my friend.